Welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I am joined this week by Andy and Mercedes Lilienthal. Now, Andy and Mercedes are both very well traveled, and they're traveled in a bunch of unique vehicles. One of the things that make them so special is the fact that they've gone around the world and they've used some of the coolest vehicles that I've ever seen, including some really rare right-hand drive Japanese vehicles, to do things like the Alcan 5000. But part of the conversation that we have today is around their recent win of their class in the Alcan 5000 using an Ineos Grenadier. So we get a chance to talk about the race, we get to talk about some of their very impressive stage finishes, and we also get to learn a little bit about their experience driving that unique new vehicle. But then we also get to talk about Andy's experience with Warren and the things that he's learned in this industry. We get to talk about Mercedes, her experience as a journalist. She's written for publications like the New York Times and, of course, Overland Journal. So they're a very cool couple. They've been around the overland industry for a very long time, and I really enjoyed my conversation with them at the Overland Expo. So please enjoy my conversation with Andy and Mercedes. Well, thank you both for being on the podcast with me today. It has been such a joy to watch your guys' journey. We've known each other for a really long time. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think, Andy, when you and I first started working together.
2006?
I would think so. So very, very early. So even right before we started Overland Journal.
It was like right around then, yeah.
So a long time ago, you were a member of the Expedition Portal Forum. We've interacted for a really long time, and you've been such an important part of the industry. I believe that some of the work that you did with Warren to help support overlanding was pivotal to this industry being healthy. Because once a large company, a high quality, well respected company like Warren starts to get involved, then it's easier for other organizations to see maybe this overland thing is going to be cool. So personally, thank you for all of that support that you provided through the years. And then Mercedes, you made a career change and you decided to become a full-time journalist, which is brave.
I did.
So
yeah, it was.
You are very brave, and you've been highly successful at it. I mean, you have written for some really big titles, and you've had some well-published pieces, and you've traveled around the world. And you guys both were recently, identified by Ineos as this opportunity to drive the Alcan, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But what I'd first love to do is just kind of get some background in when did you guys first decide that you wanted to travel, or has it always been a thing?
Do you want to tell a story?
Well, yeah. So from right at the get-go, we met on a trip. We both like to travel and road trip. Literally, the first time we met was a 5-hour drive from St. Paul, Minnesota to Chicago area, Milwaukee, Chicago area for a car show. And so, yeah, we actually...
Random happenstance.
Yeah, we actually met that way. But in terms of more adventure travel, I mean, road tripping and all that stuff was something we would do. It's just something that we naturally gravitated towards.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of more adventure travel, we were at I believe it was the 2015 Northwest Overland Rally.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple from South Africa, and they gave a presentation. They even brought a little generator so they could power their projector.
Sure.
And they gave this presentation about how their life is about travel, and they lived on the road, and they were doing a North American tour in I believe it was a Nissan with a truck bed camper. And they put together this amazing slideshow. And I remember sitting there going, I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of knew, but I didn't realize that you could make this into a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And, I knew about Overland Journal clearly, and read Overland Journal, and sort of knew that I felt like this was sort of my niche. I wasn't a lifelong off-road guy. I was into lowered cars and all small cars and all this stuff. And so when I went back to Warren Industries in 2010, I bought a Suzuki Sidekick, right? Small.
Those are awesome.
Capable. Loved it. We called it the Teal Terror. And so we had the Teal Terror there, and we had way overpacked for Northwest Overland Rally. And
we all have done that, by the way.
Oh, yes.
You guys are not alone.
True. And so we saw this presentation. She turned to me and literally said,
we need to talk.
We need to talk.
We need
like
to talk.
I think we both left that presentation going,
Changed.
yeah, it was a fork in the road that I don't think we expected to actually get to, but we knew, I was working in the four-wheel drive industry. We both loved to travel and take trips.
Yeah.
And suddenly it sort of came to me, this gestalt, this idea, like, hey, like, we can marry these two things that we enjoy, off-roading and travel, and it's this thing. It's like, I've found my people.
Yeah.
And but those two people that put that presentation on, it was a big, it was a moment.
It was at the right
Big
time
turning
for you
point
guys
for us.
to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, and then because you had worked with journalists for so long,
Yes.
that you really had a good idea of how both sides of that coin felt,
Yeah.
how it felt to be the manufacturer, what kind of content that you felt was supportive of you as a manufacturer. You identified maybe the ways of going about it that were better than others.
Perhaps, yeah. My career had started in magazine journalism, and then I swapped sides of the desk, like so many people do, and went into the PR aspect of it. But I always kept writing on the side because I enjoyed it. But yeah, so I guess maybe I came at it at a different aspect, a different angle.
And what's the website that you have that covers all the tiny vehicles?
So that's called subcompact culture.
Subcompact culture,
Yeah,
that's right.
and we don't feed it quite as much just because that market is almost non-existent anymore.
It's tiny.
It is,
Yeah, it is
if you
literally
will. Yeah. So we started Crankshaft Culture in 2016.
Yeah.
And that covers all vehicles. Our mantra is every vehicle is an adventure, and
Okay,
we're
it's
united
so
by
true.
horsepower. Yeah.
Or watts.
Or watts
Or watts
sometimes.
now,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right. Electrons at times.
Yes.
Yeah, which is fun too. I mean, the electric vehicles I think are just really enjoyable.
Yes.
They have their place for sure. Well, that's very exciting. Now, tell me, Mercedes, like, what was the day like when you decided that you were gonna make that switch? Because that's a big move. And what kind of work were you doing before? I just don't recall.
I spent nearly 20 years as a commercial interior designer and project manager.
Okay.
And I had various jobs within that field. Most of it was working for well-known architecture firms, and then I was on the facility side of things. The last few years was I was a department and people head manager at Nike World Headquarters, based right outside of Portland, Oregon.
What a fascinating
company
to work for.
Yeah, very fascinating, and very challenging as well.
Sure.
Just a
Very
lot of
demanding.
dedicated, demanding, passionate people at headquarters, and so spent nearly 20 years doing that, and just a lot of that whole entire career gave me a lot of gratification, but I felt like I was missing something. And the further along I got, I just felt like there was just something more that I needed to do, and something different I needed to do.
Yeah.
And when Andy went to Warren, and when we moved to Oregon from the Midwest, that's where we're both originally from.
Sure.
We had many long conversations. And in 2018, I think it was a flight to Boston and coming back from Boston, where we basically said, okay, you've got the insurances, because of course in the U.S. here, we don't have national health care, and everything's privatized. Long story short, we said, okay, if I'm going to basically fall off a cliff or jump off a cliff willingly, he's got the insurances for health and life and whatnot.
Yeah, sure.
Let me try to freelance and see if I can make a go of it. And I jumped off that cliff and, realized what I was going to do. And before I knew it, I was writing for outlets like the New York Times and Tread Magazine and Expedition Portal. I was writing for you guys and a bunch of other titles. And so, a lot of hard work. I was also doing some PR and marketing on the side. And, backtracking quickly, in 2008, I think the bottom fell out for a lot of people, and including us. We both lost our jobs within a year of each other, and we had just bought our first and only house we still have, because we bought small and right.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and we both lost our jobs, and so we said, well, that's when we started Crankshaft Consulting, and we've always had that running for freelance stuff. So we've written here and there, and we've done just odd jobs here and there with it. But then I took the helm of it full time in April 17th of 2018, not like I'm counting.
Yeah. Remember what time?
No, actually, what's funny is I left Nike World Headquarters, and they have different markets in each of their buildings where you could buy salads or whatnot. I bought my salad, and I persisted to go to one of my former employees as a contractor, also another design client, and did CAD work for him as a freelancer, and ate my salad there as a freelancer.
Amazing.
So I had not even a minute off. And I dove right in.
Well, there's a couple things that I've noticed about when you made that shift that I think has led to your success. When in this industry, we get a lot of people that pitch ideas, and I think the challenging thing for people to remember is that ideas are actually the easiest part of the process. Everybody has a good idea. A lot of people have ideas that they're going to do someday, or that they'd like to pitch. So the idea part is actually the easiest. We get tons and tons and tons of ideas. It's the execution that really separates someone from the rest of the field. And Mercedes, in general, for our experience, you have just been so professional. You're very detailed. Your follow-up is excellent. Like, you respond to emails in a timely fashion. And for an editor, that is like finding Shangri-La, because it is shocking how many people want to be a journalist, but they actually forget the fact that you need to still be a professional.
Yeah.
And being a professional is what separates those from that write for the New York Times and those that are still trying to get into their local,
Right.
club newsletter.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you should be really proud of the way that you took your 20 years of professional career and you just maintained those values and those ethics of professionalism, and you brought it into journalism. And I have no doubt, combined with your great writing and your experience and everything else, but from what I noticed it was that professionalism and that follow-up and that consistency that I think gives titles and editors a lot of confidence. So those that are listening,
Thank you.
keep that in mind. Like, Mercedes made this huge shift in her life from being in interior design, which is also a very admirable career, but to shift to being a journalist. And it was just the fact that you followed through. You did what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy. A lot of long hours, a lot of non-billable hours, and I didn't realize there were so many transferable skills.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that at the time, and I'm still learning that part.
Yeah.
There was a lot of skills that I had that just shifted in a different way.
Yeah.
The creativity part of it, most of my articles, if not all of them, have at least some of my photography, but most of them have my own photography.
Sure.
All of them, where most of my articles have all of my photography in them.
Yeah.
I pride myself in that.
Yeah.
I don't get paid any more for my photography being in there.
That's
I
true.
choose to do that because that's showing my complete full perspective with anything that I write. But that feeds my creative outlet from a visual standpoint of where I was with commercial interior design to now being with photography, and then the verbal aspect of it with the journalism. So it's a unique shift.
It is a unique shift, and being a photojournalist as opposed to just a journalist is actually another big opportunity, a big selling point for someone to consider you, is the fact that you can take professional photographs and then also write as a professional. That's actually quite difficult to find. And the challenge that we experience is that everyone thinks they can take great photos.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because taste is very, very challenging to define, and it's also very, very difficult to be critical of. So we find, because Overland Journal is all about the visual, like
Right.
Stephanie Brady, who designs the magazine, is an interior designer. That's the reason why the magazine looks the way that it does.
Interesting.
So for us, it is all about the white space, and it's all about what fills it,
Sure.
which is these beautiful photographs. So when you tell someone that their photographs don't meet our standards, people get really offended.
Sure.
Right.
And I'm like, well, first of all, you took it with your iPhone.
Yeah.
Right.
And you took it at 6 foot. You didn't even squat down or get it at an angle or put something in the foreground. Make it interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Make it interesting. So the fact that you have been able to excel in photography and then, of course, just be published in these incredible titles, do you feel like that is what has helped to also propel these opportunities like the Alcan?
I think so. For me, I'm always learning, and I'm always open to criticism, to helpful criticism, constructive criticism.
Sure.
Like when you say, how about taking this this photograph this way, or, teaching moments.
Yeah.
I'm all for it because that helps me get stronger, and that helps my editors, and that helps then the publication. So for me, I'm all for that because it just helps everybody all around. So, but with that, then my portfolio gets stronger, the publication gets stronger, then I learn, And I can then, take that to, a manufacturer like Ineos, for instance, or Subaru, or, Honda, or Jeep, or VW, or any of the
variety
VW, or any of the other, maybe future manufacturers that are out there, and say, this is what I've done. This is who, or Andy has done. This is who we've written for. And, for the photographs that we've published in X, publications. Yeah. And this is who we are. And I think that professional level, the experiences that we've, backed ourselves with in the past can help catapult us in the future.
Yeah, you guys are a powerhouse. And I also compliment the fact that you guys have been able to, as a couple, been able to work out how you work together, which is not easy.
Still working that out.
It's not easy. It's very challenging. Yes, it is.
It is.
It has its moments, but there are things that we try to learn about too. We're working in a 1,000 square foot house.
I love tiny homes.
Yeah.
As we talk from a 14 and a half foot trailer.
It's about the size of our house.
That's also our garage, by the way, because we don't have a garage, so
that's
it's
a whole other story. But
also our garage.
learning those dynamics. Okay, she handled stress different than I do. She may handle situations differently than I would, and there are times where I want to go, no, that's not how you say it. Yeah. But that's how she says it. That's not how I say that. Right. And it takes, I can hear her in the other room or whatever. I mean, in that aspect, it's no different than any other coworker. Yeah. You might hear your other coworker saying this and this, and you're like, no. But you know what? That's the way she handles it. I handle it differently, and vice versa. And I think that is a metaphor for pretty much the way we also compete in rallies, when we travel. Yes. We've heard these stories from travelers over the years, couples who say, you might be really good at, say, folding the tent up after a camp, and I might be better at hooking the trailer back up.
Right.
So rather than try to get in, try to be jacks of all trades here, let each one of us excel at what we do, rather than try to muck it up. So
right.
And also remembering that there's another side of those conversations that are happening, and the manufacturer you're dealing with, or the sponsor or whatever, they may prefer a different approach. Right. So they may resonate more with Mercedes, or they may resonate more with you. Mm-hmm. So you're right. It is important to let people maintain their voice, because one of the things that's in short supply in many industries is authenticity.
Right.
And it's something that it takes a lot of mindfulness to maintain, because if you try to be all things to all people, or if you don't maintain your authentic voice, then it's going to be a really quick ride.
Absolutely. And I feel, especially these days, people can sniff out authenticity
big time,
pretty well.
Because it's rare.
It is rare. And
so you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think one of the biggest things for me, no matter if it's a manufacturer or even each other, one of the biggest tools for me is just to listen. Yeah. You can learn a lot by just listening. And we need to work on that from time to time, and especially.
Sorry, what'd you say?
What'd you say? But especially since now you are a full-time freelancer as of almost a year, it's coming up on. You've worked remotely since COVID on behalf of Warren since COVID, but then you shifted into full-time freelance. But that's a whole nother ball of wax. Right. Still working from home, but we need to still listen. Whether it's us or a manufacturer, and that still gives you a lot of power to hear them and what they want, and that's also an important thing.
I agree. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah,
fair point.
Well said. Well said, my friend.
And a special thanks to Onyx for their support of this week's podcast. Going further on your adventures is about having the right tools. The Onyx off-road app's intuitive maps make it easy to find trails and disperse camping. And their offline maps give you full GPS navigation capabilities, even without cell coverage. Personally, I use Onyx for every trip in North America because I always know who owns or manages the land that I'm traveling on. It also makes for a reliable track recorder, and I can filter the trails based on the four-wheel drive or motorcycle that I'm using. On my most recent trip in the Quartermaster, I used the Onyx to find trails near where I was staying in Joshua Tree. I used the difficulty rating and the elevation to to determine which trails are best suited to the vehicle and the weather. Thanks again, onX, for your support of the Overland Journal podcast.
Awesome. So let's shift a little bit to the Alcan. Now, you recently did the Alcan with the Grenadier, and you guys won your segment, which is awesome. But I believe you've done it a few times before that with your own personal vehicles.
Yeah.
So what was the impetus in? Because I've always found it fascinating, but I've never done it. And so, what got you guys interested in the idea of the Alcan?
Yeah. Years ago, I was at Portland International Raceway for just a track event. I think it was a vintage sports car event. And there was a guy that had I believe it was a Subaru Forester, and he had Alcan decals on it and had a big map that showed the route. And I remember looking at this thinking, going, wow, that looks amazing. Like driving to Alaska. Yeah, that's cool. And it's like some sort of, competition. And okay. And I remember stopping and looking at it thinking, okay. And it's this thing called TSD, Time Speed Distance Rally. And okay, it's all on public roads, and you don't have to have a $250,000 race car to do it. I thought okay, and so as I became more involved in the automotive industry, I ran into my first Northwest Automotive Press Association meeting. I ran into a gentleman by the name of Jeff Zerschmied, and we got talking about time speed distance rally for some reason, or it was real close to that first meeting. And he says, "Oh yeah, it's great." And I said, "Yeah, I've always kind of thought about doing it." He's like, "Oh yeah, Cascade Sports Car Club has your monthly rallies. You should do it." And I said, "Oh, that's great. My wife and I would probably, have a lot of fun." He's like, "Well, I don't know if I'd do it with your wife because I've seen, I've seen
Don't
things
do it
end
with
badly."
your significant other.
But, yeah, and I said, "I think we can handle it." But so anyway, we did a couple of those starting in 2018, and we just
Is that when you guys had your Prado? Your little
no, we
you had a Mitsubishi. What was your little SUV? You had?
So we
Pajero.
Did,
that's right.
Pajero.
That thing was cool.
Thank you. Yeah, we still have one of them, and but we just did it in our little daily driver car.
Okay.
And we thought, hey, this was fun. Like it was just a local club rally, and we did okay. And we thought, hey, this is a lot of fun. It combines road tripping and travel, and you're with a bunch of other fringe lunatics who like to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about that Alcan thing, and I started looking into it more, and it was like, hey, I think we can do this. I said, and then we decided, well, what would we take? Let's take that Pajero that we have, which was kind of lunatic because it's diesel and it's super slow for what it is,
And it's right-hand drive, and it's a 1991, so it's older.
And so, but we started
perfect.
we started talking with people about it.
Winter Alcan too.
It was a winter Alcan. And
There's two.
Yeah, so it goes
summer
back
versions.
and forth. So
I did not know that.
like the Olympics, there's summer and winter, and it's every 2 years. So when we first did it in 2020 in the Pajero, it was a winter Alcan, and then we did it again in 2022 with Subaru of America and Subaru Motorsports in an Outback Wilderness, and then we did
That was the summer one.
that was a summer one,
Right.
And then
So
again,
the winter one is only every 4 years.
Usually,
correct.
yes.
Yeah. So anyway, when we heard about this, we were like, let's do it, and I spent a ton of time on vehicle prep for this because I'm bringing this old diesel up into the Arctic where we might see 60 below zero.
Totally.
And so
Cold.
we made a number of
Among other
modifications to it. A number of I rebuilt lots of that car's driveline and suspension.
Did you end up putting a diesel heater on it?
I put a diesel coolant heater.
Cool.
So,
yeah, exactly. Like an Esparro or Webasto. Yeah.
Evo. And that was absolutely.
Did it become evil, or did it work
Oh
well? It worked
no,
well?
absolutely the opposite. It was
Lifesaver.
100% crucial. We were in Inuvik in the Northwest Territories, and it was 43 below zero, and there's no way you could start that old diesel up at 43 below zero.
And the challenge is even driving it, you can't, a lot of times those small displacement diesels can't actually produce enough heat.
Right.
So even when you're driving, if you're driving into the wind, you can actually drop the engine temperature low enough that it actually causes damage to the motor.
We brought, Mercedes actually crafted a winter front for the grill to block it. But there was one day driving from Dawson City in the Yukon to Inuvik, where it was actually from Whitehorse to Dawson City, but it doesn't matter. And we got to Dawson, and I remember we stopped because we were going to do some ice racing on the river up there. and we had been driving 8 hours, and we stopped. We were waiting our turn, and I just watched, after 8 hours of driving, just watched our coolant temperature just drop.
Yep.
It was not making any heat. It was incredible.
It was the same that we experienced like in Greenland or in Antarctica.
Sure.
Just
Yeah,
like you
I can
can't
imagine.
even point the front of the truck into the wind, or else you're in
Right.
big trouble.
Yeah.
Big trouble. So you got to keep the back to the wind. You have to keep and you never shut the car off.
No.
Yeah. Right.
But you still have to have the diesel heater running to keep it at temp. So
Yeah.
that's why I was wondering if you had done that. That's cool.
Right.
Yeah, we would
That's
see as
super
we were
cool.
going up the Dempster, we would see like excavators or whatnot in the absolute middle of nowhere, miles away from anybody, just chugging along.
Yeah.
Because they just can't shut them off.
Yeah, you don't dare.
Yeah.
You don't dare
Nope.
shut them off. So, what did you guys? You sound like you did some prep with the vehicle. Had you guys done any winter driving training, or what did you guys do to help feel comfortable? Because that's so much of these time distance
Yeah.
rallies is
Right.
like, not getting stuck,
Right.
not
right.
not losing traction. Because if you're spinning a lot, it's affecting your mileage and all this other stuff.
Well, the first thing is we were raised in the Midwest. So that helped.
There you go. Yeah, see, I'm a California boy. I had to get trained on that stuff. I had no idea.
So in 2020, we actually did some skid training where we were at PIR, so Portland International Raceway. We were actually in, what was it, an old Taurus, I think, where they had on this
Nothing
crazy, where we did skid pad training, which was pretty crazy. And that was my first time doing that, which is really wild.
And that's where they have
The little
framework.
outriggers and they had you in different scenarios and
That's
different and then we did what was it, they had the pad, part of the pad wet, and then you went around circles, and then until you broke traction. And so we did that, but of course I'm from Wisconsin originally. I'm dual citizen German American, but grew up and was born in Wisconsin, and then he in Minnesota, and so we have that with winter driving behind us. But for 2024 with the Ineos Grenadier, I mean, it was basically he was the driver, so you just kind of hopped right in and let your guts take over and your background take over. But in 2020 we had that training, which kind of really helped.
And you guys had you kept the BF Goodrich all-terrains on there, or did you use other tires?
For 2024, with the Ineos, we used Michelin X-Ice snow tires. So we had run an all-terrain, studded all-terrain in 2020, and this year we thought, let's go studless, but let's go with the dedicated snow tires.
Right.
We're big fans of BFG KO2s. We have them on a number of our actual vehicles, but we wanted.
It's not an optimal tire for winter.
No, it's a three-peak snowflake rated tire, but doesn't have that winter comp.
It's not
Right.
optimized for it. Yeah.
So we
those
went to the
X-Ice tires
Michelin.
were cool.
Yeah, they were. It's funny because when we put them on, they're certainly not knobby looking like a KO2.
Right.
And in fact, I'm looking at the tread depth, going, I don't know. And they were brilliant in the snow. And we did ice racing up on Great Slave Lake outside of Yellowknife. And
In the Grenadier?
yeah,
How fun.
Yeah.
and
It was
there
pretty
was
wild.
there were some very, very, very fast cable Porsche Dakar. There were numerous, turbo
Porsche XT
Subarus,
and-
Cayennes, all that stuff.
Yep.
And I took third place overall in the Grenadier. And there's still a bit of me that thinks they screwed the timing up and I didn't do that well, which is possible. But anyway, I'll take the third place. So, but it was incredible.
And when you had it in the ice racing scenario, did you go into off-road mode
So,
to open up some of those stability control parameters and
right.
stuff?
So my first, we got 2 runs. I took 2 runs. So the first one I turned off traction control and found out that traction control turns itself back on over 30 miles an hour, I believe, 34 miles an hour, something like that.
Something like that.
So as I started out down the straightaway, and the first corner was a right-hand sweeper, and I went into the corner, and the throttle just went away. It went, oh no. Yeah, oh no may not have been exactly what I said. But so the second run, I decided.
Family-friendly show.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
gonna say,
exactly, exactly.
bleep,
Yeah.
babies, bleeps.
So
I was outside shooting, so I had my camera harness and both cameras, and trying to make them or having them not freeze, because it was about 15 below zero with a wind.
Yeah.
So
So the second run, I put it into 4-wheel high with the lock center differential.
Sure.
That helped defeat some of the traction controls,
Yes,
and that helped a lot because the top three finishers were all body on frame SUVs because the track had some really deep snow ruts, and I think some of those Porsches and the Subarus and whatnot, they just would get hung up in the crud, if you will.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the Grenadier was a champ.
So what made you decide to use the Grenadier? What about the Grenadier was exciting for you? And for those that are listening, none of us on this podcast are sponsored by Grenadier. We do get access to the vehicle because we have audiences, but we've not been paid by Ineos to do any of this stuff. And I think that's important. Mm-hmm. But so what made you guys think we want to use the Grenadier, and what'd you think of it?
In 2020, as we are putting up the Dempster Highway in our 99 horsepower diesel Mitsubishi.
Considering putting hazards on because we're going so slowly.
Getting passed by everybody. We had a discussion, like, what are the qualities that make a good winter Alcan or even a summer Alcan vehicle?
What's the ultimate vehicle?
Yeah, and we decided it was adequate power, good ground clearance, and comfort.
Yeah.
And those were the three things
many
that you...
long miles.
Yeah. You're doing 600 miles a day, sometimes 800 miles a day. And so...
12 to 13 hour days.
Yeah.
You start, especially in the winter, you start in the dark, you rally in the dark, you have 6 to 650 mile transits usually, and then you finish in the dark.
Wow. And Mercedes had some experience behind the wheel with Ineos over in Europe, and so we thought, hey, that would be a really good choice for an Alcan vehicle. It's also new, and it's got good power, plenty of ground clearance. The Recaro seats are comfortable. So we thought, hey, let's see if they'd be up for that, and they were. And a lot of kudos to them for putting out a brand new, first of its kind vehicle from a brand new manufacturer.
Well, and the fact that let's build the cool overland vehicle. Mm-hmm. Like they literally, like right. a brand new car company that makes the car that we all want to buy.
Yeah,
we all want to buy.
The fact that they have 1.1 million miles of severe duty testing, right? Sure. Whether it's in the Sahara or the Valley or in Scandinavia in the Arctic or whatnot. For them, like you said, brand new manufacturer, first time vehicle, and for them to say yes for something like this. And even your Africa trip, right? Yeah. For them to say yes, knowing the fact that there may be issues, they may not finish, there may be something that may be a huge hiccup. Huge kudos for them to put their necks out there to say, all right, well, let's just see what happens.
And I had no idea how it was going to go. I had unit number 72.
Wow,
of the production run. And so it was very early. When you look at the VIN.
Yeah. Look. Yeah, I don't know yet.
So it was so early, and like you said, it just took a lot of courage on their part to say, we're going to just throw this thing into the middle of Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they say. It's built for Africa. So it was a way to check that out and see if it was true or not.
Yeah. Well, especially for journalists too, for people that have the ability to write about it like I did, for instance, in the New York Times or Tread Magazine or some of these other publications to say, or Overland Journal to say, all right, here's the good stuff, here are the challenges, here are things that we would like to see improved. To have that openness and the ability to say, okay, we're going to give this vehicle to 3 journalists that have a wide variety and a lot of eyeballs on us to say, okay, here's the truth. As unbiased people that are putting this through severe conditions, that's pretty incredible.
I think so. So, Mercedes, unbiased opinion, what'd you think of the Grenadier?
Well, this time I was a navigator, so this time I was on the passenger side.
But you've driven it a lot.
I've driven them as prototypes over in France off-road, and then the Eurospec production models for the Global Reveal, both right-hand and left-hand drives. So I was excited for Andy to finally have a chance to drive them because he never had a chance to drive them. Super solid. We weren't sure what the frost heave highways were going to present. We weren't sure if it was going to start getting really squirrely, with the roads, because we know how bad the roads are up there.
Body on frame construction, recirculating ball steering. It doesn't have the trappings of, say, a sports car.
Right. So we weren't sure, especially with so many long miles with that bad road conditions, how it would be. And I had a pretty fresh back injury too. I know that really the Recaro seats are beautiful and they're comfortable. I didn't know how that would be with my back. Never had any back fatigue. Oh, nice. Everything felt planted, and especially as a navigator, this is my route book. This is the route. But my head's down 90% of the time. I never needed Dramamine. Oh, wow. So that vehicle was so planted. I didn't get motion sickness at all, and I usually do.
Yeah.
So that's a huge testament to that vehicle just keeping you in one spot and not just being like this all the time, whereas some of the other 4x4s just have that act to wander.
I think the fact that it's got that wide track width, people don't realize that it's much bigger than a classic Defender or an old Land Cruiser. It's a much bigger car than that. The wheelbase is nice and long, wide track width. Wheels are out at the corners, so it's pretty comfortable on the highway or on any road condition for that matter.
We found it really good on bad roads when we were on the Dalton going north.
Starts to shine.
It really did.
It did.
We've both driven, solid axle vehicles before, and sometimes they get a little unsettled and whatnot. And the suspension tuning on it was really good. We were really impressed.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's, engineered in Graz. I mean, they build heavy-duty military vehicles and for bad roads. So it's like that's what they built this thing to do. That was my experience as well. The number of times that I gave up on the road before the Grenadier did.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, after 1,000 miles of corrugation, I'm like, I have got to take I have got to take a break.
Yeah.
I have got to take a break. And the car,
1,000 miles, I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, brutal.
And a special thanks to Onyx for their support of this week's podcast. Going further on your adventures is about having the right tools. The Onyx off-road app's intuitive maps make it easy to find trails and disperse camping. And their offline maps give you full GPS navigation capabilities, even without cell coverage. Personally, I use Onyx for every trip in North America because I always know who owns or manages the land that I'm traveling on. It also makes for a reliable track recorder, and I can filter the trails based on the four-wheel drive or motorcycle that I'm using. On my most recent trip in the Quartermaster, I used the Onyx to find trails near where I was staying in Joshua Tree. I used the difficulty rating and the elevation to determine which trails are best suited to the vehicle and the weather. Thanks again, Onyx, for your support of the Overland Journal podcast.
Brutal. So, well, that is cool. And then you guys are doing the Alcan and you're going along. And I remember some of your social media posts, and I could see the beginnings of you guys realizing that you might do well.
Oh God.
And I could, and having raced myself and everything like that, I'm like, oh, I know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Because you're so hopeful that this might actually go the way that it could.
Exactly.
How did that?
For me as a navigator, there are 36 total teams for the Alcan 5000 Rally in 2024. We were part of the 2 SOP class or seat of pants class, which were 17 trucks and SUVs.
Sure.
That's like over 40% of the whole entire class. Yeah. Huge class. And a lot of talented rally teams. We can't say we're novices anymore because but I'm still fairly new to incremental time calculations. So basically, if we haven't touched on this, it's a precision-based rally. So it's not like stage rally where you're sliding sideways into, in gravel and, you have to get there very fast and this and that.
It's not going as fast as you can. It's precision. It's
precision-based. So you have to be perfectly en route, perfectly on time, everything has to be perfect. Right. If you're early, you're penalized points. If you're late, you're penalized points. So everything's just got to be perfect to what the rally master has for their course.
A perfect score is 0, like golf.
Right, so 0 seconds, right? So on day 2, we were literally 0.1 seconds off, 0.2 seconds off, like 1.2 seconds off. And I'm like, holy bleep, I'm like screaming.
We were getting like some of the times that the unlimited class cars, which have rally computers.
With rally computers.
It was...
We had no idea what we were doing. I mean, I had an idea what I was doing.
If I can interject real quick, so when we did this in 2022, there was the first stage, which was the Mosquito Lake stage. We got off course, and that's the worst thing you can do in these TSD rallies. And so we got off course by quite a ways, and that immediately kind of took us out of any contention. On day 1.
One direction that took me off, but the next direction was several miles down the road. Right. It was just a bad luck of the draw because usually they're point this and then point that, and then you can turn around once you realize that. But mine just ended up being luck of the draw that it was way,
But so in 2024, we heard we were doing that stage again on day one, and so
redemption for
we
me.
we were like, we're gonna nail this. We're gonna do good. We're not gonna get lost, and we didn't. And we were like, hey, this is great. We're mid pack, which is kind of where we figured we'd be, and that was great. So then when we do the second TSD on Blackwater, I think it was
Blackwater. Yeah, Blackwater TSD, Blackwater.
And when you do this, you have a phone that has a GPS on it, and it dings every time you go through the checkpoint, and it'll go bing, 2 seconds late, or bing, half a second early, right? And it kept saying 0 or 0.1 or 0.2, and we're just
I was just screaming.
yeah. And I was like, don't get excited. We don't know what we're doing. Who knows? The other teams might be doing this too. So
well, and as the time kept on progressing, the days kept on progressing, we realized, I think we've got a magic combination here. The Grenadier, he was able to hold the speed in manual mode very well. We found that 24 miles per hour was a little bit hard for him to modulate and keep that speed with the gearing. But other than that, he was able to really hold that speed in various terrain. And with my calculations, basically there's long form math that you can do to say, okay, you're taking off at 8:15. I'm not going to bore you guys.
We jokingly say the Alcan is a mix of sleep deprivation and long division.
And somewhat hunger.
That's not going to work for me.
No, I know. And
math is not my strength. Math is not my strength.
Well, it's not mine either. But long form math to basically say if you're taking off at 8:15, your next direction is like 0.26 miles, turn left on Smith Street, right? Let's make it easy. So then there's a calculation for you to be able to say at 8:15, or 8:16 and 0.26 seconds or something like that. Then you turn left on Smith Street. So you figure out all those incremental direction changes. Then there's times that you can figure out.
Because they give you the distance and they give you the speed, and you have to figure out the time. Yeah, so that's
if you want to.
Yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Part of it.
But when we on that second day, we're looking at the scores, going, "Well, that can't be right. We couldn't have won this." And we're like, oh my gosh, we won the stage. We never won in stage before.
Not a major stage.
Not a major stage. It's certainly not at Alcan. And we're like, oh my gosh. And then we were just able to kind of maintain the consistency, which was, it's exactly like you said. We were just like,
right.
Am I really doing that? It's like,
we had a disastrous day. I think it was day 6, I believe, where we had a darn dog in the middle of the TSD that wouldn't get out of the way. He's honking. I'm screaming.
This dog was literally sitting in the road barking at the car. And I'm using the Grenadier's toot horn. Right.
And I'm like, use the real horn. And so trying to get him out of the way, then he wouldn't get away. We had a GoPro fall off and fall into the footwell. I was worried it was going to fall on his side, like under the accelerator. So I'm trying to reach for it. Then my Navi supplies all fall into the footwell. My seatbelt locks. I couldn't get anything. So as he's driving, and we're under the TSD, right? So, and I had no directions to tell him where to turn. So I'm trying to get, it was a mass chaos. So we had a very bad score that day. So we slipped into second place for 2 days, but we regained, and I think we led for 7 of the 10 days, I believe, of the whole entire Alcan 5000, and we finished on top for the class. We came in 10th overall.
Amazing.
Which of 36 teams, which we're still pinching ourselves with, and with an Ineos Grenadier. So.
Yeah, and one thing I should just mention too is the one thing that we love about the long distance, time speed distance rallies is it marries a bunch of things that we're passionate about. Mm-hmm. So automobiles, right? Travel, especially these, some of these areas that we go are pretty remote, especially in the summer, and then the camaraderie is amazing because you are with. It's like going on a trip with your friends or new friends. Everybody's great.
Yeah, and one of the remote stretches we had was 304 miles in between fuel stops. So everybody dumped fuel. And in the winter Alcan 5000 rally, everybody's mandated to carry at least 5 gallons of fuel. Oh, sure. Or have an auxiliary tank or replacement tank or something. Sure. So.
And so did you guys put your fuel on the rack, or did you have it in a bladder? Or?
No, we used a Rhino Rack's double jerry can holder to go on top of the Pioneer platform and then climb the ladder carefully. And
carefully. It is a slippery ladder.
Yeah, we even occasionally one of our buddy cars. So they want you to have a buddy car every year in the winter one, just in case you have you go off.
Sure.
And so every now when I'd climb on the ladder, John, when our buddy car, he'd like hold on to my legs because it's gonna be slippery.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to you both.
Thank you.
That is an
Thank
incredible accomplishment. I mean, the Alcan is something that I've followed off and on for probably 20 years. So it's an incredible achievement, and it shows how much you guys have learned and grown as drivers and navigators and, vehicle evaluators. So that, I mean, these are very difficult navigating and driving conditions. So now that you've done the Alcan, what do you think is going to be the next big idea? If you want to share it.
Yeah, so we're actually. Oh, did you?
Can
wanna
I talk
say?
about this one?
Oh, sure, go for
I
it.
could talk. We have a couple of different things going on. So do you want to talk about what's happening at the end of this month, and then I'll talk.
Yeah, so the end of this month we're headed out to Connecticut. Going to be doing some stuff with Subaru, going to Subi Fest. They have held on to our 2022 Alcan car, and they bring it to all the Subi Fest events, and they have us talk about it, and so we get to go interact with that community, which is really fun.
And such great cars.
Yeah,
Truly.
great.
It's especially since they came out with their Wilderness series with more ground clearance and stuff, and it's fascinating to meet a lot of these buyers. They're really into having adventures and going out and seeing what's on the other side.
Because they're
of the
good.
hill.
Because they really work.
They're really great.
Yeah. And then got a couple other things going on, and then in June we fly to Europe for about 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
So we're in Europe for I think it's about 4 or 5 weeks.
When are you gonna arrive in Europe?
So we are arriving in June 18th, I believe. And so starting June 22nd and finishing July 7th, we are doing the northernmost rally in the world. So it is called the Baltic Sea Circle Rally, and it is 9 countries, 16 days, and about 7,500 kilometers. And we are going to be driving a Volkswagen ID Buzz EV.
How fun.
So
what countries?
Let's see. So we're starting in Germany, in Hamburg, Germany, and then it's going Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, then going around the opposite back end. So Estonia, Latvia, and then Lithuania, Poland, and back to Germany.
You'll love that.
So,
well, I'll honk as I drive by in the Grenadier.
yeah, are you going to be around there?
Literally at the same exact time.
Really?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
We'll
no, I leave.
We can pass each other.
I'll leave Greece on the 18th of June.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to
driving
talk offline. Maybe
Eastern Europe. So.
Nice.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Will you be going through Poland?
Yeah, right. Well, close. So
Okay.
I'll be going through Germany as well. So.
Oh my
Have
gosh!
fun.
Well, we'll have to see.
We'll wave.
Yeah, my sister lives over there
We'll
in northern part.
We'll just honk and wave.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when we were in New Zealand.
We'll have a coffee.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll have your Grenadier, and then we'll have an ID Buzz.
So fun.
In
So
New
fun.
Zealand, we went to New Zealand in 2016, and Matt Scott was there, and we ran into him.
Yeah.
We planned that. We met at the Church of the Good Shepherd on the outside of Christchurch, and he pulled up, and we looked at each other and swapped some ideas, and went,
Yeah.
Isn't that
small
funny?
world.
Isn't that funny?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. So you've got those things coming up. Good luck with the new race. That sounds really, really fun. Hopefully you can go from strength to strength on these rallies and keep doing new things. How do people follow what you're doing? So you have Crankshaft Culture.
Mm-hmm.
What are your Instagram channels? How do people stay connected with what you're doing?
Absolutely. So we have crankshaftculture.com, which is our website. Our social media is going to be Crankshaft Culture on Instagram and Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. And then we have our personal, I'm Andy_Lilienthal at, Andy_Lilienthal on Instagram.
And I'm Mercedes_Lilienthal on Instagram, and then also LinkedIn, where Crankshaft Culture as well.
Nice.
And then he is, Crankshaft Cult on X or Twitter, whichever one, And then I am Writer with Grit on
sweet.
X and Twitter.
You are definitely a writer with grit.
I thought that was fitting. That wasn't taken yet. So.
I love it. I love it. That's really great. So what advice would you give to people that are getting started with the kind of things that you're enjoying, like the rallying, maybe even some of the journalist stuff? What's some advice that you would give to new journalists or new adventurers?
For me, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to try it. Talk to people that are in it. Most people will be very kind and helpful. Some people may not be, but just have a thick skin and just keep on trying, really.
Yeah, it's the only way you grow.
Yeah.
I'd say, don't wait. Don't
don't
wait. life is very short, and we never know when our last day is.
Yeah.
So if there's something you want to do it. If you want to start writing, start networking, network. Talk to people, and just be open. Don't be too staunch and set in your ways on stuff, because there's lots of ways to skin cats, and
And it takes time and consistency.
Right.
And then next thing you know, the opportunities come up and you're driving the Alcan rally in a Grenadier.
Right. I mean, both our dads died. My papa died in 1998. Your dad died in 2014 at age 66. Both of them 66. And, I am almost 50. And Andy's not that far off. Yeah. And, if my day's tomorrow, I want to have lived. So we're working along the way, and and doing what we want to do while we're working along the way. So
and you guys are doing it, and you're an inspiration to so many. You're certainly an inspiration to me.
As are you to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and we're just grateful for all you guys produce, and we're thankful for the time that you guys have been able to contribute to our own outlets as well. And I really appreciate you both being on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having us.
You're very welcome. And we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.